Well, it was a wonderful comedy routine. He gives a very good speech. It was funny. He has a wonderful turn of phrase. Unfortunately, his rhetoric bore no relation whatsoever to the reality outside the ivory tower of that Manchester conference hall. You know, as you said yourself, we're in a country with surging inflation, soaring gas prices, empty petrol stations, empty supermarkets, pubs and cafes that can't get enough workers, the highest tax burden in 70 years, shortages of labour, of goods, pigs being slaughtered because there aren't enough abattoirs, crops rotting, colossal national debt, the country pulling apart, social cohesion all but vanished. Yeah, none of that stuff did he address in his speech. It was all more of this sort of sunlit uplands stuff that we've heard about for so long and never quite appears. It's always just over the horizon.
Is that a problem? I mean, it's nice having that enthusiasm on tap, being able to turn on the national pride. Is the sort of braggadocio and bombastism and bluster actually just a big distraction? Or should we be grateful that we've got a Prime Minister who shows optimism and love for this country?
No, he's a disaster. He's a human wrecking ball. This is all an illusion. It's all smoke and mirrors. He talks about levelling up. What has he actually done for the red wall voters of the North and Midlands? Give me an example. It's all targets and aspirations and things that will happen in 10 years' time or 15 years' time. But it's not what's actually happening now. I'll tell you what's happening to people in North and Midlands constituencies is they're being clobbered by soaring inflation, by rising taxes, by the end of the uplift in the universal credit. You need rising wages to cope with the rapidly escalating cost of living.
So is Boris Johnson going to run out of road, essentially? I mean, he courted a lot of support via Brexit, especially from those red wall voters. But perhaps, he could be excused because he's had a pandemic to deal with. He had, the first part of his prime ministerial tenure was dominated by Brexit, and arguably he has sort of got Brexit done, despite Northern Ireland being a bit of a car crash. Could he potentially be excused for the fact he hasn't laid down a legacy yet?
Well, look, I agree with you. No modern prime ministers had to face a crisis like COVID. But he is now using that as a distraction, as an excuse. He's known for 4 years that if you make this country inhospitable to European workers, and hundreds of thousands of them leave, there's going to be a labour shortage. And he did very, very little to prepare for that. He talks about a high wage, high productivity economy, but there are other ways of achieving that. Apart from driving immigrants about, you train people, you educate people. He's done none of that.
Boris the man, because, he seems captivating. Like I said, I'd love going to the pub with Boris. I mean, who wouldn't? I think that's a big part of his appeal. But what do we know about him as a person? Allegedly, he wrote 2 different newspaper columns when he was deciding which side of the Brexit argument to back. There's the allegations of not allegations. He got fired for inventing quotes for a national newspaper. I mean, that's pretty bad. That's fairly dishonest.
Well, yeah, I mean, he's a serial liar and con man, in my view. Your viewers will probably disagree. Let me inject a sort of personal note on this. I went to Brussels in the late 1990s as the correspondent there for The Times, and I was a victim of what Boris Johnson had done as the Daily Telegraph's correspondent in Brussels between 1989 and 1994. And that was essentially to create a very powerful narrative which had the 27 other member states ganging up on poor old Britain and, trying to destroy our way of life and imposing all these rules about no prawn cocktail crisps and straight bananas and all the rest. There was a grain of truth in that, but not much more. Most of what he wrote was invented out of whole cloth. But that was the narrative that took hold. And by the time I got to Brussels, that was all that Fleet Street editors want. So that was the only prism through which they could see or understand Brussels, and not just newspaper editors, but politicians. So every politician, every prime minister, every chancellor of the Exchequer who went to Brussels during the 1990s and early 2000s played into this narrative of, we're going to defend British rights against all these scheming Machiavellian Europeans. The truth is that Britain was a big, powerful member state. And when it engaged in the arguments, it tended to win the issues, as it did on creating the single market, expanding eastward competition policy. And when it lost, it got opt-outs, as it did on Schengen and the euro. It was in a very good position. What is not to like about that state of affairs? But Boris's narrative trumped, prevailed, and that was his greatest achievement. It was really, the Brexit referendum of 2016 wasn't won in the few months of the referendum. It was won over the preceding 20 years when this narrative had been pumped out ad nauseam.
I think, on that one, I agree with you. It took a long time.
Yeah, I know you were a Brexit MEP,
yeah.
Alex, and you won't agree with me, but he's still doing the same thing. He's still pumping out this bombastic, jingoistic, world-beating British stuff. It's all very well. We all want to feel good. We all want to, be proud of our country, but it's rubbish. It's a total illusion. But the country is going downhill very, very fast. But
surely in a country with our democratic system, where we have a prime minister, not a president, so he doesn't have, as such, sort of complete executive power, does it not hurt having a little bit of fun on the way? And at least he's instantly recognisable on the world stage. He often brings a wry smile to other world leaders' faces. There is a bit of a role for the Prime Minister of being ambassadorial, and Boris does that very well.
Well, let me turn the question back to you. Who are his allies on the world stage? Which fellow leaders have any respect for Boris Johnson?
I can't speak on behalf of about 180 odd presidents and prime ministers around the world, but he doesn't seem to have a load of enemies.
Our role. I could carry on. What does Brexit? I would maintain our influence derived from the fact that we were in the EU and the US regarded us as a powerful voice within the EU. That's all gone. What are we now? We're a divided, diminished nation. It gives me no pleasure to say that. I'm not a loony lefty. I voted Conservative several times, many times in my life. But this party has, I feel totally disenfranchised now. I wouldn't vote for this rabble in a 1,000 years.
But you say that, but Boris secured one of the biggest majorities in Conservative history, so he's pleasing a lot of the country.
Boris secured 40-something% of the vote, but not a majority. What he's very good at is riling up his base, inflaming his base, exploiting grievances. And that's, you can see it, when he mocks the French, prenez grip, donnez-moi un break. What's he doing? He's playing to his base in the Red Wall vote, Red Wall constituencies. They love this stuff, but it's not remotely helpful to British interests. And he's fun, but it's a very expensive and destructive sort of fun. And sooner or later, people are going to tire of it. Sooner or later, I think people, the scales are going to fall from people's eyes. I don't blame people for voting Brexit at all, but he's a con man. He duped them.
Martin, thank you so much for your insight into our Prime Minister there. We might disagree on Brexit, but it was fascinating having your opinion today.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.